Mortal Kombat, the iconic yet infamous arcade game from 1992 that burst onto the scene like a fireball to the face. A title that was allegedly so graphically violent, so unapologetically brutal that it sent moral guardians into an absolute tailspin. Digitised actors being torn limb from limb, blood spraying like confetti, and fatalities so excessive they made Street Fighter 2 look like a tea party. Fans were enjoying the spectacle, but politicians were seething, and so much so that by 1993 the United States Senate conducted a hearing on video game violence, referring to Mortal Kombat as an emerging threat. This ultimately led to the creation of the Entertainment Software Rating Board, an institution formed to slap an age rating on anything with more than one polygon and a pint of pixelated blood. However, as is customary on this channel, we're not here today to discuss the safe, sanitized, officially sanctioned versions of Mortal Kombat that grace shelves in North America. Oh no. Instead, we will turn our gaze towards the illicit underworld of gaming, the shadowy realm of unlicensed, unregulated and utterly fascinating bootlegs. In particular, we examine the strange and often shoddy Mortal Kombat games that were distributed across the grey markets of the globe. Those produced not by Midway or Acclaim, but by unknown developers operating well outside of legalities. These are the Famicom knockoffs, the pirate carts, the cartridges you'd find buried in a back alley bazaar. Using cheap materials and limited resources, pesky pirates created what can only be described as budget reinterpretations of popular titles. And yet, despite the low production values, these games were everywhere, particularly in regions where legitimate game distribution had dried up or never existed to begin with. So with that said, hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. It's time to hit that subscribe button and brace yourself for an uppercut to the senses as we descend into the absurd and often hilarious world of illegal Mortal Kombat bootlegs. A realm of palette-swapped warriors, sausage-shaped blood effects, and more than one tragic spelling mistake. During the 90s, famiclone consoles, hardware imitations of the NES, were rampant in South America, Eastern Europe, Russia, China, and pockets of Southeast Asia. These machines allow bootleggers to continually flood the market with new titles long after Nintendo had packed up its 8-bit operations. And with Mortal Kombat setting arcade cabinets ablaze worldwide, it was only a matter of time before someone attempted the impossible, cramming a gory, digitised 5-button arcade brawler onto the humble NES. So many Mortal Kombat knockoffs were produced that attempting to catalogue them all is akin to counting grains of rice in a Taiwanese sweatshop. In fact, there are dozens, possibly hundreds, each one more cursed than the last. And sorting through them all was enough to give me a migraine that not even a double dose of ibuprofen could fix. But you know what's even more exciting than playing illegal knockoffs? Scoring absolute knockout deals on officially released video games. Right now, through my links, you can grab Mortal Kombat 1 with a bone-crunching 65% off, Tekken 8 with a mighty 64% off, and Street Fighter 6 at a staggering 74% off, plus huge discounts on character passes to round out your roster. But that's not all, the links via my pinned comment can get you money off of thousands upon thousands of games. So make some purchases and support my work simultaneously. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Anyway, let us turn our attention to one of the earliest and most infamous Mortal Kombat bootlegs of the bunch, a creation born not out of quality craftsmanship or artistic vision, but from the twisted minds at Hummer Team. Now, Hummer Team weren't your average back alley pirates. These Taiwanese developers were prolific, known for such unauthorized masterpieces as Kart Fighter and Street Fighter 4 for the NES. Games that were simultaneously as ambitious as they were weird, like trying to recreate the Mona Lisa using cheese slices. In the summer of 1994, they released a Mortal Kombat game for the famiclone hardware, and with all the subtlety of a scam email from a Nigerian prince, they boldly titled it Mortal Kombat 2. However, upon booting the thing up, it becomes immediately apparent that this isn't Mortal Kombat 2 at all. In fact, it's a bootleg of the first game, the original 1992 arcade classic, simply rebranded to trick unsuspecting buyers into thinking they were getting something newer, bloodier, and more cutting edge. And that, dear viewer, is what we call a marketing lie. But to be fair, given how loosely reality and these bootlegs tend to intersect, we're lucky the game wasn't called Mortal Kombat 9 Electric Boogaloo and starred a playable Ronald McDonald. So what exactly does this bootlegged blasphemy contain, aside from audacity and dashed hopes anyway? Well, believe it or not, Hummer Team's Mortal Kombat 2, or as it should be more accurately titled, Mortal Kombat slightly related to 1, it is actually a surprisingly faithful recreation of the original arcade game. Well, by pirate standards, that is. Imagine a cave painting of a Ferrari. It's got the shape, a few recognisable lines, and at least one horse in the general vicinity. The playable roster is frankly impressive. You've got Raiden, Sonya, Sub-Zero, Scorpion, Kano, Johnny Cage, Liu Kang and Goro, which is bizarre when you realise that the towering four-armed Shokan warrior now stands at exactly the same height as everyone else. He's gone from the terrifying sub-boss to looking like someone's Uncle Dave in a Halloween costume. Still, Reptile is nowhere to be seen, vanished like his canonical self in the original game, so no palette swapped mysteries for you here, I'm afraid. As for the environment, many of the iconic arenas from the arcade version are here, sort of. They're scrambled, sometimes out of sequence, sometimes missing important background elements, and often rendered in a way that looks like someone described them to the artist over a crackly telephone line. A valiant effort, mind you, but it still resembles something you might see after hitting your head on a CRT. Then there's the combat. Special moves broken. Sub-Zero's legendary Ice Blast, for example, now functions like a basic fireball. So instead of freezing your enemy in their tracks, it just kind of annoys them. Meanwhile, Scorpion, famous for his rope dart, "Get over here!" antics, he now hurls generic fireballs, like a bootleg Ken Masters who's had his identity wiped in a traumatic car boot sale. And I regret to inform you, dear viewers, that there is no blood. Nor fatalities. That's right, this supposed Mortal Kombat game has about as much violence as a damp flannel. No spines are ripped, no heads are crushed, instead it's all a bit Nintendo, shall we say. Which makes sense considering that Nintendo themselves spent most of the 90s acting like the idea of digital blood would cause instant moral collapse. But lo, the story doesn't end there, because confusingly, this wasn't even the only Mortal Kombat 2 for the NES that wasn't actually Mortal Kombat 2. In the stage left, Cony Soft, operating under their pseudonym Yoko Soft, presumably because even they didn't want their real name attached to this nonsense. Their own Mortal Kombat 2 bootleg is so far removed from the source material that calling it a Mortal Kombat game is like calling a chicken nugget fine poultry cuisine. In fact, it looks and plays far more like Street Fighter 2 Pro, which makes perfect sense when you realise that Cony were recycling their own game engine from that very title. It's like they took a Honda Civic, put a dragon sticker on the side, and tried to convince you it was a Ferrari Testarossa. Just have a look at this nonsense. Still, in a bizarre twist of fate, I must confess, I actually like the backgrounds. Some of them are charming in that grotesque early 90s PC shovelware sort of way. And they even had the decency to reproduce a few of the arcade game's music tracks, so at least your ears can pretend you're having a good time while your thumbs suffer. Just like Hummer Team's earlier efforts, Cony's Mortal Kombat 2, if we dare call it that, also came stripped of the series' most defining feature. Which means there's no blood, no fatalities, no gruesome dismemberments to scar your childhood with. Frankly, without these, it's about as Mortal Kombat as a pillow fight at a knitting club. But even in this half-baked form, the bootleg train didn't stop chugging. That's right, despite the NES clearly screaming for mercy under the weight of these ridiculous ports, the pirates weren't done. No, they began iterating like particularly persistent cockroaches. Enter Mortal Kombat Pro 5, one of the first of these baffling upgrades, which added Shen Tsung to the playable roster, and yes, the sorcerer was given his trademark ability to transform into other fighters, albeit implemented in a way that looked like a video glitch you'd report to your AV club teacher in 1995. Still, it's technically a transformation, so progress! Shortly after came Mortal Kombat 5 Turbo 30, and no, I don't know what the 30 stands for either. Possibly the number of times it crashed before round 2. This version introduced a novel solution to the NES's RAM constraints, palette swaps. Every fighter now came with 2 alternate colour schemes, instantly turning your humble 7-man roster into a multiverse of Mortal Kombat doppelgangers. Why create new characters when you can just recolour existing ones and call it a day? A tradition so sacred, even Midway followed suit with Smoke, Noob Cybot, and the rest of the ninja spectrum. Now, lest you think Cony had cornered the market on dodgy Mortal Kombat sequels, Hummer Team weren't about to be shown up by some clowns using the Yokosoft label. In 1995, just 1 year later, Hummer Team returned with Mortal Kombat 2 Special, a follow-up that brought the roster up to a staggering 14 characters. That's right, not only did they expand the lineup, but they also went back and fixed some of the earlier game's broken special moves, meaning characters now functioned a little closer to how they did in the arcade. A minor miracle on NES hardware. But just when you thought this couldn't get any more ludicrous, in waddles Mortal Kombat 3 Special, followed by the unforgettable Mortal Kombat 3 Special 56 Peoples. Yes, 56 Peoples. Now, I don't know about you, but I for one love when my fighting game roster is measured in peoples. It gives the whole thing an oddly humanitarian twist, like a UN meeting with uppercuts. In reality, of course, it was just more palette swaps. 48 of them, allegedly turning every character into every other character by altering a few pixels. It's like Smash Brothers, but without the fun. And as stupid as it sounds, these versions were popular, particularly in parts of South America, Southeast Asia, and Eastern Europe, where they were sold out of plastic bags next to pirated VCDs of The Matrix. Today, copies of 56 Peoples have even become collector's items, with certain cartridges fetching real money thanks to their sheer absurdity and regional obscurity. So yes, bootleg Mortal Kombat on the NES may be a mess, but it's a historically fascinating mess, and we've only just begun. Now, astonishingly, by the time we reach 56 Peoples, yes, we're still talking about the actual game title, Hummer Team had figured out how to take things even further. Not only did this bootleg boast palette swaps by the bucket load, but it also managed to include blood effects. That's right, somewhere deep within the bowels of their unlicensed development bunker, they had cracked the code and finally injected a splash of crimson into the NES. Granted, the blood looked more like flickering raspberry jam than anything remotely realistic, but in the realm of Mortal Kombat knockoffs, this was practically a technical revolution. It was a cherry atop their beautifully cursed cake. But Hummer Team weren't done. By 1996, they had returned once again with yet another unlicensed gem, a full-blown NES conversion of Mortal Kombat 3. And in keeping with their proud tradition of confusing everyone involved, some versions were mislabeled as Mortal Kombat 4, just to really throw buyers off the scent. The base version included 7 characters, while the rest of the roster, as you'd expect by now, were once again conjured into existence through the sacred ritual of palette swapping. These clones offered the illusion of a massive lineup, when in reality you were just fighting green Liu Kangs for the 5th time. Still, to give credit where it's due, the very idea that so much of Mortal Kombat 3 was somehow crammed onto the NES cartridge without the system igniting into flames is a genuine marvel of bootlegging tenacity. Naturally, this wasn't the end either. Multiple iterations of this NES Mortal Kombat 3 would flood the grey market, including the imaginatively titled Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, which boasted a suspicious 48 fighters. Again, most of these were just the same characters in slightly different shades, red striker, turquoise striker, and possibly purple striker, all attending what felt like the world's most aggressive cosplay convention. As mentioned, we also got entries boldly labelled Mortal Kombat 4 and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 4, neither of which featured anything from the real Mortal Kombat 4, of course, but hey, if you printed on the cartridge, it must be true. But the piece de resistance, that honour belongs to the version proudly calling itself True Mortal Kombat 3. A powerful name, a definitive statement, until of course you examine the cartridge label and discover that it has been misprinted as Tour Mortal Kombat 3. Yes, Tour. A title so non-committal, it sounds like it was named by a teenager, reluctantly agreeing to a group project. Truly, it is a masterclass in the fine art of bootleg English. And we've still not reached peak absurdity yet. So let us now cast our gaze towards the futuristic dystopia of 1998. The same year, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time redefined what gaming could be, and also coincidentally the year Conysoft released one of the ugliest things ever committed to cartridge. Yes, in the timeline where the PlayStation was king and the Dreamcast was imminent, Conysoft, operating under the gloriously ridiculous alias of Ho-Secon of USA, which sounds less like a game developer and more like a fouled-off brown deodorant, dropped their next Mortal Kombat bootleg on the NES. Because why not? So, behold, Mortal Kombat 5. A game with a title that suggests narrative progression but delivers something closer to a fever dream, followed shortly after by a re-release called Mortal Kombat Trilogy 5, because of course it was. These games start with a putrid yellow and blue title screen that practically screams "made in Microsoft Paint" during a blackout. And what follows is a bizarrely broken recreation of Mortal Kombat 3, but with all the quality of a petrol station sandwich that's 2 weeks out of date. Graphically, this is one of the ugliest entries in the bootleg lineage, and that's saying something, considering we've already covered games that made Goro look like a knockoff Lego man. The colour palettes clash like a bar fight at a clown convention, character sprites wobble about like they're melting, and the backgrounds resemble abandoned Commodore 64 experiments. And yet, get this, you can actually perform fatalities. Sort of. Technically. But only in the first round, because you see, by round 2 the game just can't be bothered anymore. Oh, and don't expect a variety of gruesome finishes. No, this masterpiece comes with one fatality for every character. An uppercut that causes your opponent to explode like a sausage factory under pressure.
The return of the sausages.
Yes, you heard that right. Basically, when you land a hit, blood doesn't just spray, it bursts out of them in chunks so visually confusing it looks like someone's flinging supermarket bangers at the screen. It's brilliantly appalling, the kind of low-effort carnage that can only come from a bootleg game held together by glue, hope, and a deep disregard for the art direction. So, at this point, a fair question arises. Did the world really need this many Mortal Kombat bootlegs for the NES? Was there a moment in history where someone somewhere truly believed that what the Nintendo Famicom needed in the dying embers of the 8-bit era was yet another poorly coloured knockoff where blood spurts out like Cumberland links in zero gravity? Ultimately, the sheer volume of these unlicensed Mortal Kombat ports tells us everything you need to know about the franchise's dominance in the 90s. These weren't obscure curiosities cooked up in isolation. This was a full-blown grey market industry fueled by demand from eager kids with famiclones and zero parental oversight. Because when official versions didn't exist, the bootleggers stepped in. They filled the gaps, met the need, and flooded the market with Mortal Kombat carts so dodgy they'd give your NES tetanus. So whether you're basking in the relative refinement of a Hummer Team Special Edition, or savouring the glorious sausage-flinging chaos of Conysoft's blood-splattered monstrosities, one thing becomes clear. There may just be a Mortal Kombat bootleg out there for everyone. Well, almost everyone. Let's be honest, most of these are barely playable, but they're fascinating in their own janky way. They represent something important, a snapshot of a time when Mortal Kombat fever was so intense it transcended borders, consoles, and legal frameworks. It bled into everything, literally in some cases, and these bootlegs are the relics left behind. Don't forget you can grab Mortal Kombat 1 with a bone-crushing 65% off, Tekken 8 with a mighty 64% off, and Street Fighter 6 at a staggering 74% off, plus huge discounts on character passes to round out your roster. Get up to 90% off of thousands of games and support all of my work simultaneously by using the links down below. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this weird upload, and I'll see you all again soon. Cheerio!